Now that all the trade inspections are done, we are now ready to insulate the house. And the very first discipline that's going to come in are the spray foamers, because they're going to be doing the roof deck. I did not have it in the budget to do my walls, unfortunately, and that's why I went with the zip system sheathing, because I can establish an airtight barrier on the outside using that. But I wanted to show you where those two strategies come together. There's a lot of details that we need to think about, or else we may still not have a very tight envelope at the end of it. So let me show you kind of what the details that I've been worrying about look like. Well, when you're doing spray foam insulation, the eaves are a notorious spot for foam not being effective, because it's really hard for the foam installer to get in here. And so we like to be able to block this cavity up here so that there's something for the foam to adhere to. If not, it's just going to spill over and it's not going to accumulate and it's not going to air seal very well. Well, the foam subcontractor told my builder that it was okay. We would just, or they would just put some cardboard over here and then they would foam up against the cardboard, but I wasn't comfortable with that. I really preferred that the framers would have taken the zip system all the way up to the roof deck, but they didn't do it. Move on, but I was not comfortable backing this eave with cardboard, because I'm in a coastal area, and what is a bunch of humidity, which is what this area in the eave, this is now your unconditioned space exposed to all the humidity. What's that going to do to cardboard over time? It's going to, of course, deteriorate it. You're going to get mold. I wasn't happy with that. So here was my solution. We would cut pieces of zip system and use them as blocking. Now, there's no reason to tape that seam, because that is kind of above where the tape would be effective. It really wouldn't be doing anything anyway, and we're going to have that entire cavity back there spray foam. But I came across this little gem right here. Look at the huge air leak, and this is up in the soffit. So had this been the Tyvek home built the code, this probably would have never been addressed. They just would have stuffed bad insulation on the inside and would have gone about their business. Now, of course, air sealing is all about the details. You kind of have to know how everything comes together, and you got to have a game plan about how you're going to establish a good pressure boundary. The other side of that wall that I was showing you, of course, you can see a little bit of daylight. That's where the blocking that I installed doesn't seal completely to all the surfaces, but of course that's just a tiny little gap. The spray foam will take care of that. But all this area up here, including the roof deck, of course, and then down this gable, anything above the top plate is going to have to get spray foamed. And there's a lot of little nooks and crannies that the spray foamers are going to have to pay a lot of attention to. I'm going to be going back behind them and checking all these nooks and crannies, because this is where your problems are. This area here above the garage, this triangular gable wall, for some reason the framers did not use the zip system sheathing, and well, I'm just trying to be a reasonable person, and we're trying to still get our air tightness despite that. And so I've already started doing a little bit of air sealing using some rigid foam board to seal some of those gaps. Of course, using zip system wouldn't have done anything about that long gap that goes up and down to the peak. So those kind of details, had that rigid foam board not been there, then that would have been a giant hole that the spray foamers would have had to try to block in some way. They'll be on the other side of this wall spray foaming, and so they'll have a nice surface to be able to have the foam adhere to with very little gaps. So on the other side of this giant stud right here, this load-bearing stud, to the right of it is the building envelope. To the left of it is not. So we don't have to worry about, for example, that gap that you see right there. That's actually to the outside. We don't have to worry about sealing that. But anything to the right of it, we do. So, of course, we haven't had any sheet rockers yet because we haven't insulated, but we have a giant hole that's open to the house that we're going to need to seal up in order to get the blower door and actually pressurize and depressurize the house. So I got some rigid foam board, did my best to seal it. I've spray foamed it from the inside the wall cavity. Here's the other side of that wall that borders the garage. As you can see, this is where I really applied my spray foam to. And I went a little crazy up here. These are just areas that are going to be hard to reach for the spray foam contractor. I'm trying my best to, probably went a little bit overboard, but I'm so paranoid about spending all this money to try to get an airtight barrier, and then some of these hard to reach places are going to kill me in the end. So these are some areas that I just wanted to go ahead and hit. We'll put bad insulation here in the walls, But at least this will also cover up this rigid foam board with sheetrock, but at least we'll have a nice sealed up surface here. This is one area I'm worried about because of all the wood that they've got here to support the platform above. We've got some dead wood here for nailers for the sheetrock. That's going to be a hard area to get a spray nozzle in. And so this one right here, I'm going to be paying a lot of attention to after the fact. I'm going to be going through the area with the spray foamers before they get started and seeing if they're comfortable being able to get good coverage there. If not, we might have to pull that 2x4 out of place just so they can foam it and then put it back. Just little details like that you got to pay attention to because that's where the rubber meets the road. Windows were flashed and taped properly, so we don't have to worry much about trying to get spray foam and all the nooks and crannies on the other side of the window. We've established our barrier here. The doors are a different story. This door comes as an assembly, and so you can't really flash like you can a window because all this is kind of part of it. And so we have to get really creative on the inside how we air seal it. Again, the blower door test will ultimately tell us where this thing is leaking from. But this is another sort of weak point where I don't see a great way of air sealing it. We'll have to foam it and caulk it and do other means from the inside. But again, it's just looking at these details and trying to predict, okay, what was difficult to seal? This is areas that we want to pay special attention to when we test the house. This area up here is a mess. They were supposed to use zip system. They didn't. I didn't catch it until long after they were gone. This area up here that you just see the regular OSB, we're going to be spray foaming it from the other side. So from the inside, this whole area is going to get spray foam, but some of it's hard to reach. And so again, we're worried about getting coverage. So I went ahead and used the zip stretch tape and some spray foam myself, and just trying to get some of these gaps and areas to minimize how much air leakage. The spray foam on the inside will help, but this is one area, this whole front area above the front door is just something that I'm going to be a little bit worried about, and I'll feel a lot better after we blower door test it and I can touch it up. I'm really glad I used products like this from Quick Flash. These are for the electrical boxes. I've got 2 of them that penetrate the envelope. The other ones around the house do not actually penetrate the envelope, so I didn't have to use the flashing kit, but this one I did. Again, these are just holes in the house that we have to have a strategy to seal up properly. Penetrations like this with the exhaust fan, I really paid a lot of attention to. I'm penetrating the blocking there with rigid metal just because I didn't want the spray foam to go up against flex. Flex can leave gaps. Rigid metal's a more consistent, smooth surface. So the 4-inch pipe there is taking up some space that would normally need to be insulated. Not much we can do to get spray foamers are just going to have to work around that area. The area next to it was just an open area that I could have blocked with wood like I did everywhere else. I just decided to use some rigid foam board there. And again, when we blower door test the house, I'll be going around the perimeter of the house on the outside, testing all these areas to make sure that they're not leaking. Penetrations like these that the electricians made, looks like they drilled a hole here, decided they didn't want to run the wire through it, so they ran it through that hole there. So we addressed those on the other side with some of the stretch tape from Zip or from Huber Woods, I'm sorry, that goes with the Zip system, and with a little bit of spray foam. So again, just kind of hitting it from both sides if we can. Maybe it's a little redundant, maybe it's sort of like belt and suspenders, but again, it's so important, and this gets covered up and you never can access it again. Go the extra mile. Got a little obsessive compulsive here in this area. The framers put this blocking up here, and of course the spray foamer is going to go back and it's going to be fine, but I was seeing daylight coming through there and I was bored and didn't have a lot to do, so I went ahead and hit it, and then the spray foam will just be an added benefit. But again, just trying to look at all the details. Just because you spray foam something doesn't mean that the spray foam actually adhered and that you did a good job. I'm using Great Stuff, and I'm going to tell you, Great Stuff is not all that great. I thought that using the stuff that came in a can that goes on a foam gun would be better quality than just like the one and done cans that you normally use, but Great Stuff is horrible for air sealing. I'm really glad that the spray foamer is just going to come back behind me and cover some of these areas, because if you can zoom in, you'll see some daylight right there, and that's just areas where the foam didn't adhere to. Great stuff doesn't expand that much. It doesn't stick very well. Great stuff is just horrible to use in this case. I wouldn't recommend it. Areas that do not have zip system sheathing behind it will actually leak in between the layers of your top plate here. I went ahead and hit that in the areas where it was appropriate, but you'll be surprised how much air leaks even in these little gaps here. This is a detail that drives me crazy. Of course, the spray foamer is going to get in these cavities here, but are they really going to be able to hit that gap right there in between these rafters and these roof beams? I don't know, they are, and there's like 100 of them around the house. So if they don't, if I still see daylight like this, it's a huge leak, and we're gonna have to seal those each individually with either some spray foam or some caulk or something. But I'm gonna let the spray foamers do their thing first, and then see if we need to do any touch up there. But I foresee a lot of little leaks that will add up in the aggregate if these gaps right here don't get hit. So one challenge is how to seal the bottom plate to the slab. If you seal it from the inside, it might be a little easier because it's a little bit more accessible, but imagine your air. Okay, so you can't take this path to get out of the house, but you can take all this path. And so it's really impossible to seal all those paths. So the best way to seal this is actually from the outside. So my wife and I went around the entire perimeter of the house and used a combination of liquid flashing and caulking to seal where the outside sheathing, the foundation, and the bottom plate all come together. And the spray foamers are here, so I'm going to talk to them and we'll see how this thing goes.